Sarah held the small, glittering bottle in her hand, her heart pounding in her chest. It was a tiny, ornate vial with intricate designs, and inside was a liquid that seemed almost magical. She couldn't believe she was actually going to use it, but the thought of losing James forever was too much to bear. She had tried everything, dressing up, changing her hair, being extra nice, but nothing had worked. James had always seen her as just a friend, nothing more. But this kyanmata, was supposed to change all of that. Aisha had sworn by it, saying that it had worked wonders for her cousin. Sarah trusted Aisha, but as she stood in her room, the weight of what she was about to do pressed down on her. Was she really going to use a love charm? Was it worth risking everything? Taking a deep breath, Sarah opened the cap and dabbed a few drops on her wrist. The scent was intoxicating, a mix of flowers and spices, unlike anything she had ever smelled before. As the perfume melded with her skin, a strange feeling washed over her, a mix of excitement and fear. She hoped this would be the answer to all her problems, that it would make James finally see her as more than just a friend. It had all started so innocently. Sarah and Aisha had been best friends since high school, sharing secrets and dreams. They had always been there for each other, through thick and thin. So when Sarah confided in Aisha about her feelings for James, Aisha didn't hesitate to offer her advice. "Sarah, you've been going after this guy for years," Aisha said, taking a sip of her latte, as they say in a cafe. "It's time you did something about it. You deserve to be happy." Sarah sighed, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. "I know, Aisha, but I've tried everything. He just doesn't see me that way." Aisha leaned in, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "What if I told you there was a way to make him notice you? To make him fall for you?" Sarah looked up, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Aisha smiled and reached into her bag, pulling out a small, delicate bottle. "This is kyanmata. It's a love charm, a special perfume that's said to make someone fall in love with you. My cousin used it on her crush, and now they're engaged. It's foolproof." Sarah's eyebrows shot up. "Are you serious? Does that kind of thing actually work?" Aisha nodded enthusiastically. "I've seen it with my own eyes. Just a few drops, and he'll be yours." Sarah was skeptical, but she couldn't deny the temptation. She had been in love with James for so long, and the thought of finally being with him was too enticing to ignore. "Where did you get it?" she asked, curiosity getting the better of her. "There's a shop in the market," Aisha replied. "It is a bit hidden, but the woman there knows her stuff. Trust me, Sarah. What do you have to lose?" Sarah hesitated, but Aisha's confidence was contagious. Maybe, just maybe, this was the answer to her prayers. The next day, Sarah found herself wandering through the crowded market, the sounds of vendors and shoppers filling the air. She had been to this market many times before, but today felt different. Today, she was searching for something she had never sought out before, a love charm. After what seemed like an eternity, she finally spotted the small shop tucked away in a corner. It was easy to miss, almost as if it was meant to be hidden. The sign above the door was faded, and the windows were covered with heavy curtains, giving the place an air of mystery. Taking a deep breath, Sarah pushed open the door and stepped inside. The shop was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of herbs and incense. Shelves lined the walls, filled with all sorts of strange and exotic items. Bottles of colorful potions, bundles of dried herbs, and crystals that glowed faintly in the dim light. Behind the counter stood an older woman, her eyes sharp and knowing. She smiled as Sarah approached, as if she had been expecting her. "Welcome, my dear," the woman said in a smooth voice. "What can I help you with today?" Sarah hesitated, unsure of how to explain what she was looking for. I was told you sell kyanmata?" The woman's smile widened, and she nodded. "Ah yes, kyanmata. A powerful charm, indeed. You're looking to win someone's heart." Sarah nodded, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Yes. I've tried everything, but nothing has worked. A friend told me this might help." The woman studied Sarah for a moment before reaching under the counter and pulling out a small, ornate bottle. "This is what you seek," the woman said, holding the bottle out to Sarah. "But be warned, my dear. Love charms are powerful, and their effects can be unpredictable. Use it wisely." Sarah swallowed hard, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. But she was desperate, and in that moment, she was willing to try anything. She took the bottle from the woman, feeling a strange sense of finality as she handed over the money. "Thank you," she said, putting the bottle into her bag. As she left the shop, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she had just crossed a line she could never uncross. The next few days were a whirlwind of excitement and anticipation. Sarah couldn't wait to see if the kyanmeter would work. She carefully applied the perfume each morning, watching James closely whenever they were together. To her amazement, it didn't take long for things to change. James, who had always been distant and indifferent, suddenly started showing interest in her. He complimented her on her appearance, asked her about her day, and even invited her out for coffee. Sarah's heart soared. This was everything she had ever wanted. For years, she had dreamed of being with James, and now it seemed like her dreams were finally coming true. She felt a rush of happiness every time he looked at her, every time he smiled at her. It was like living in a fairy tale. They began spending more time together, going on dates, watching movies, and having long, deep conversations. James seemed genuinely interested in her, and Sarah couldn't believe her luck. She was falling even more in love with him, and it seemed like he was falling for her too. But as their relationship progressed, Sarah started to notice small things that made her uneasy. James's affection, which had once been sweet and gentle, was becoming more intense, almost possessive. He would call her multiple times a day, asking where she was and who she was with. He would get upset if she didn't respond to his messages right away. At first, Sarah brushed it off as him being protective, but the feeling of unease grew stronger with each passing day. She had wanted him to love her, but this wasn't love. It was something else, something that felt wrong. Sarah tried to ignore the nagging feeling in the back of her mind, convincing herself that it was just her imagination. But deep down, she knew something was off. And as much as she wanted to believe that everything was perfect, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a terrible mistake. He would show up unannounced at her work or at places, his intense gaze following her every move. The love she once felt was slowly being replaced by a sense of dread. One evening, after another suffocating day with James, Sarah decided to confide in Aisha. "Aisha, something's wrong with James. He's not the same. He's become so obsessive," she said, her voice trembling with fear. But Aisha, ever the pragmatist, brushed it off with a laugh. "It's just a phase, Sarah. He's in love with you. He's probably just scared of losing you." Aisha's dismissive tone made Sarah feel foolish for even bringing it up. Despite her friend's reassurances, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. This wasn't the James she had fallen for. The James she knew was kind and considerate, not this possessive, controlling stranger. The cracks in their relationship were becoming impossible to ignore, and Sarah felt her world slowly unraveling around her. The unease Sarah felt during the day soon began to invade her nights. Sleep, once a refuge from her waking worries, became a battleground of nightmares. Each night, Sarah would wake up drenched in sweat, her heart pounding in her chest. In her dreams, James would appear, his once warm and loving eyes now cold and hollow, as if the very essence of him had been drained away. She would wake up gasping for breath. It wasn't just the nightmares that unsettled her. Sarah began to feel an eerie presence in her apartment, like she was never truly alone. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of her vision, and she constantly felt like she was being watched. The once comforting smell of the perfume she had once adored now made her nauseous, its scent lingering in the air like a sickening reminder of her mistake. She tried to scrub it off, washing herself repeatedly, but it clung to her skin, refusing to let go. James's behavior became more worse with each passing day. He started showing up at her apartment unannounced, his eyes filled with an intensity that scared her. Sarah found herself withdrawing from him, but the more she pulled away, the more insistent he became. He began to isolate her from her friends and family, convincing her that no one else understood their relationship like he did. The nightmares and James's escalating behavior left Sarah feeling trapped. She was no longer sure if the fear she felt was from her dreams or from the man she once loved. Each day was a struggle to maintain a facade of normalcy while she felt her sanity slipping away. After another disturbing encounter with James, Sarah's patience finally snapped. The fear and anxiety that had been building inside her reached a boiling point, and she knew she couldn't continue like this. She needed answers. Confronting Aisha was the only option left. Sarah marched over to Aisha's apartment, her hands trembling as she knocked on the door. Aisha opened it. "We need to talk," Sarah said, her voice laced with desperation. She didn't wait for an invitation, pushing past Aisha into the living room. "Aisha, I need to know what was really in that kyanmata," Sarah demanded, her voice shaking. Aisha's playful face vanished, replaced by a look of guilt and unease. She hesitated for a moment before finally speaking. "I didn't know it would turn out like this, Sarah," Aisha confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought it was harmless, just a way to get his attention. But I've heard stories. Bad stories." Sarah's heart raced as she listened to Aisha's confession. Aisha explained that while most kyanmata products were so good, some could have unintended side effects, especially when used improperly. They could amplify feelings, but sometimes in ways that were dangerous, twisting emotions into something unrecognizable. "I never meant for this to happen, Sarah. I swear," Aisha said, her eyes filled with regret. The weight of Aisha's words pressed down on Sarah like a heavy stone. She realized that the charm hadn't just affected James, it had altered something fundamental in both of them. The ground beneath her seemed to shift, leaving her feeling unsteady and lost. She had trusted Aisha, trusted the power of the kyanmata, but now she was left with a darkness she couldn't escape. After the confrontation with Aisha, Sarah's realization that the kyanmata had altered her life in ways she never imagined began to sink in. She noticed how much she had changed. Her once vibrant and joyful personality was now overshadowed by constant anxiety and fear. She no longer recognized the person she had become, a shadow of her former self, caught in a web of her own making.